So in the New York Times this morning, there's the best piece anyone's written yet about Elon Musk's influence in the administration and the people around him. As you can see there, this piece has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 byline names on the byline. And I will read to you one paragraph. Some of the young workers on Mr. Musk's team share a similar uniform, blazers worn over t-shirts. At the General Services Administration, some staff members began calling the team the Bobs, a reference to management consultant characters from the dark comedy movie Office Space who are responsible for layoffs. Good morning. Welcome to the morning meeting along with Dan, Sean. I'm Bob, at least for today, because I'm wearing the t-shirt over the blazer. Just an homage to the Musk team. Thank you for joining the morning meeting based on the network television networks and newspapers morning calls, really the networks. Morning calls called the morning meeting, where they talk about what's coming up that day and Washington and around the world. Then they kick it around. The surprise O. Henry twist on two-way is then you all get to ask your questions, make your comments. So if you're here on the two-way platform and you want to do that, please raise your hand. As always, whether you're here on the two-way platform or writing in the chat on YouTube or the popular platform X, coincidentally owned by the aforementioned Mr. Musk, please remember the ethos of this platform. Unlike some media, which tries to make its money off of creating faux and real division, we're all about peace, love, and understanding. If you hear something you don't like, rather than saying, I'll never watch the morning meeting again, rather say, this is a wonderful opportunity for me to learn what the other side is thinking, feeling, talking about. As always, please extend, as Dan and Sean do to each other every minute I'm with them, the presumption of grace always. Gentlemen, good morning. I see neither of you is
I'm a
dressed
little
in uniform,
lonely, to be honest
I was
with
just
you.
going to ask. Yeah.
Nobody's here. Like no one. The dog. That's it.
Yeah. Well, we're
Are
going to
you
make it a
having
regular
Chick-fil-A
thing.
left over for breakfast today?
Possibly.
Yeah.
I would love,
Okay.
I would love some of that. Thank you all for joining. If you'd like to get in the conversation here on the two-way platform, please, as some have already done, raise your hands. As always, we love our repeat customers, but if you're first time, long time, even better. We've had some already this week. It's only Tuesday, but we'd like some today. So if you've never raised your hand, please do. All right, let's run through the schedule, shall we? The president doesn't have any public events currently announced until 2, but starting at 2, he is busy as a beaver. 2 o'clock signs executive orders in the Oval Office. As we know, that tends to be a rolling press conference. So we'll see what happens there. If it is a rolling press conference, it won't be his only press conference of the day, because starting at 4, it's a Bibi Palooza. Prime Minister Benjamin, what's his middle name? Jefferson Netanyahu arrives at the White House at 4, greeted by the president. And then it's just a cavalcade of events. Bilat at 4:05. Then expanded Bilat at 4:20. Then 5:20, a press conference. If they start on time, it's going to be the lead-in to two-way tonight. And if they start a little late and it goes long, you'll get special bonus live coverage on two-way tonight. And then at 5:40, they're having the early bird special dinner. I've never recalled, you guys may remember differently, I never recalled seeing a presidential dinner announced at 5:40. You guys, I mean, they're usually
No, but I like it. It's somebody who finds that.
By
By the
very
way, can I just
appropriate
one
time.
thing for your scheduling purposes?
Yeah.
The traditional foreign leader event is what they call a 2 and 2. So each side gets 2, total of 4 questions, but 2 each side. So the question becomes, does President Trump, and he usually stuck to that, to be honest, on the foreign visits. The question is, on a day like today, does he stick to it or not? And it's not
That's
just
a
him,
great
obviously.
question.
This is negotiated with the other leader.
Yeah. Those guys have a lot to talk about, both to each other and to the world and the media. So I wouldn't be surprised if they went a little beyond 2 and 2, maybe 4 times 4. We'll see. There's a rally, I don't know when it is, outside the Treasury Department today, including some of Dan's favorite groups, Move On Civic Action, the Working Families Party, and Indivisible. They're protesting against outside Treasury against Elon Musk. The rally has a name. All good rallies have names. It's called the Nobody Elected Elon Rally. I'm trying to find out when that is. I hope to feature live team coverage at 6 o'clock on two-way tonight.
Don't know what the
Sean out there. Call it the No Rally.
Yeah, the No. I don't know what the vice president's doing today. Yesterday, I screwed up. I knew what he was doing, and I forgot to put it in the day book and mention it here. He was in East Palestine. I don't know what he's doing today, but I probably do, and I just forgot. Next week, his office says he's going to Europe to an AI Action Summit in France, and then to the fabled Munich Security Conference. I'll say again, this guy is on track to be not only the most influential vice president in memory, but maybe have a hammerlock on the 2028 nomination. in a way none of us have ever seen. Peter Navarro, who played a role, we don't know exactly how big, but certainly played some role in the trade policy extravaganza over the weekend and yesterday. He's speaking live at a Politico event at 9:45. If he starts on time, maybe we'll dip into that because it's streaming live on the Politico. Link to the YouTube live coverage available in my Substack, Wide World of News Regular. Sign up today. Capitol Hill, major things going on. 10 o'clock, immediately after this program goes off the air. Not really in the air, but whatever. The Senate Finance Committee votes on Bobby Kennedy's nomination. All eyes on Senator Dr. Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, how he votes.
By the way, he votes no, and that's basically his retirement announcement.
Probably, but I still think that they're going to get to the floor if he votes no. We'll talk about that in a moment.
Oh, I know, but either way, if he votes no,
and he knows
he's not running for re-election.
He knows that. 12:30. If it's Tuesday, it's the party's separate lunches. Totally inconsistent with the presumption of grace and peace, love, and understanding. They go in their tribal lunches, Democrats and Republicans separate. Lots of bean soup being ordered always. 2 p.m., part of our Senate confirmation doubleheader, Tulsi Gabbard. It faces in a closed session the Senate Intelligence Committee. All eyes there on Senator Young of Indiana, although Senator Moran of Kansas hasn't said how he's voting. Pam Bondi at some point today may well be confirmed as Attorney General. All right, let's start with tariffs, gentlemen. I have, just as I said yesterday, I think, I have really smart Democrats emailing me, texting me saying this shows it's Trump 2.0. It's just a worse version of 1.0. He has no idea what he's doing. He's making things up. He's a laughing stock in the world. And then I have people saying this was a masterclass in leveraging and Trump gave up nothing and got a lot and sent a signal to the world. So, Dan, where are you on the scale of genius, doofus, goofus, gallant? Where are you on that scale for Trump's gambit just with Canada and Mexico? We'll talk about China in a moment.
I think politically it's genius in that he makes the threat, then there's a get, something that we got from one of them, and then he declares victory. And the headline and everyone says, America won. Trump's muscle produced a result. We never know going into it what it is he really craves. And that's, I believe, totally intentional because he just kind of plays the hand as he's going out. But he never seems to want to really follow through with this for obvious reasons. And so far, it's working. No counterparty wants to go through with this either. So I think in that regard, it is political genius. I think more than 50% of this country looks at this and says the guy's getting results. I think the other side to it is, I really don't think that he's sitting there and saying, these are the two things that I have to get, and this is strategic, and I'm going to be kind of, wise and patient with when and how I use these. I think it's just like he's just firing at everybody because he wants to constantly show action and show victory. So, I'm not going to give him the Nostradamus title yet, but they are good politics so far.
Sean?
I don't know if you can see that. I posted it on Instagram. It says, Trump wants a leader to do something. Trump announces tariffs. Left claims tariffs won't work. Leader caves and Trump gets what he wants. It's over and over again. Colombia, Panama, Mexico, Canada. To your point on the latter, what, he announces something. He gets something for the country.
Gives up nothing.
Gives up nothing in return.
Well, supposedly with Mexico, we did say we are going to put more you roll your eyes the way the Canadians roll their eyes that they're putting people on the border that they had already put on the border. So, I mean, if we're going to roll our eyes, we're rolling our eyes.
But I think so there's the substantive piece of it, right? That's number one. And you touched on this, Dan. There's the political piece, which is after 4 years of wondering whether or not the president was awake. You have a president that every day is saying, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And I think we're ready for action. We're ready to see a president acknowledge the problems, to take action, solve them. And the other thing is, I'm like, he's breaking glass and he's doing stuff. For years, we were told we couldn't do it this way. It would never work. Same old crap, same old excuses every time. And Trump's willing to do things differently, to break every norm to get something done. That's the number two. Number three is this. I was actually intrigued to see how the Democrats will respond. And I got to be honest, both the messenger and the message were unreal. Please play 108.
Let's just take Super Bowl Sunday, okay? It's going to affect beer, okay? Most of it, Corona here, comes from Mexico. It's going to affect your guac, because what is guacamole made of? Avocados, both from Mexico.
I mean, that was literally the worst. I can't. That was so awkward watching him. It was this is a beer. He took the
you
video
know what
from
though,
Elizabeth
Sean? I could see Trump doing the same exact
No.
Like,
you tell me that delivery, Chuck
thing.
Schumer looked like a kid who found a dollar under the couch.
As we say in Brooklyn, oy vey, and as the B character says on The Simpsons, ay caramba.
It was so, he looked like he thought he was anyway, it looked awkward. The idea that you're defending Mexican beer, regardless of its, where I know that there's I mean, I'm well aware of the distributorships and all that, but I'm just saying it was the dumbest message. You're up there saying, if you drink Corona, this is going to, no one.
Well, I actually, Sean,
as if we don't have American
about
beer,
that.
Craft beer and.
Well, but I disagree, because what you're saying is that there's no downside to a tariff war is just not true, right? I mean, on the one hand,
no. I agree with you, but here's my point, Dan. When you're holding up a bottle of or a can of Corona and say, this is what you're going to deal with, you're telling me that all of your whining is because I'm going to pay more for Corona? Okay, got it.
Sean, how many Americans drink beer? Saying
a lot.
To people, right? So, I mean, you're trying to find a way to relate. You're saying that the price of potash for the fertilizer is going to go up, which is going to cost you more to, get your soybeans in 6 months, is a harder thing to, I mean, just to me, I could see Donald Trump, the guy who to celebrate, Mexican, what was it? Cinco de Mayo in 2016 gets a photo with a taco. Trump's all about the visual, right?
Taco ball.
A taco ball. Thank you. Trump's all about the visual, and I actually think for once that was actually a smart play. It's just,
I love a good gimmick. I am a huge fan of the gimmick. The idea, though, that you're holding up Chuck Schumer looks like I don't know that guy's ever had a Corona in his life.
That may be a different point. Yes,
and he just looks
he's been to Corona Queens. All right, we got a lot to get to. Let's talk about China real quick. The world is not on fire with the China tariffs, which are in place, and there's retaliation. I think I have a theory as to why. But Sean, why were Mexico and Canada like a 5-alarm fire, and the China thing's like, yeah, we'll see what happens?
I mean, because of the magnet. I mean, one, China and Mexico deal with it a lot. I mean, in terms of the cross-border trade, it's obviously a lot more impactful to there. I mean, I think China was like, okay. I mean, it was done at 10% for a reason. They reacted at 10%.
Yeah. Okay. Dan, why is the world not on fire over the two superpowers in a trade war?
Because I think she knows that that there's not going to be a trade war. Because if there's a real trade war, then we're both screwed. China and Mexico, I mean, they're not in the same league. It's playing a high school team versus a pro team. The Canadians and the Mexicans, respectfully, have to deal with this a lot differently because of the impact on their economy and their job creators. China's basically like, look, you really want to if that was an equally 25% tariff on China, it would have been a very different reaction. And they could have done a lot more to hurt us right off the bat in terms of,
Dan, is it just the 1025 or is it more than that?
It must be because I was in Sean's kitchen that we think very similar. I would say they are in the same weight class, China and the United States. And I think, to be really candid, most of the world and economists say this is a bullshit set of political optics that they're both doing right now. They won't dare go at each other like this because China could inflict real pain on us real fast. Now, we can inflict pain on them too, but, they're a communist country. They can turn levers with great ease and kind of, even if people are suffering, they can kind of make sure few people know about it, at least for a while. So I think a lot of this right now, Trump wants the headline to say to people, tariff on China, I'm tough on China. But I forget, it was the Journal or somewhere says there is some skepticism brewing in Republican circles about just how tough Trump is willing to be with China.
Yes, the Journal has good coverage on this today. You're both close enough to write that I won't waste time telling you where you were a little bit off base because we got to move on. All right. Dan, what are you looking for in I'm just messing with you. Both were letter perfect. Dan, what are you looking for, expecting in the Bibi Donald Trump tete-a-tete today?
So this is interesting because I go back to what I said about Mexico and Canada. The threat, the get, and the headline. The problem with this is Bibi, I think Trump wants this to end. He wants to say, I closed this war, the hostages were returned, and like, let's move on to other things, right? Bibi is coming to say the same thing he said to Joe Biden. Patience. I'm not finished yet. I need more time, more weapons to eliminate Hamas, and we still have Iran out there. And I think there is going to be tension here because Trump doesn't want to hear this is going to drag on and we're getting, more involved.
John.
I agree. It actually goes back to the last conversation. The visual Trump wants is number one, he doesn't like war and conflict. Number two, he wants something positive. He wants a win. He wants hostages released, people to be able to thank him, obviously, but also so that he can say that he's bringing Americans home. So I think that I think that Bibi's got to figure out what is he going to say he wants and what does he really want, because there's going to be a difference between what he tells Trump and then say, okay, great, I'll take halfway, because that's it. He needs to buy some time and some space, but I don't think Trump's going to give him a ton.
Yeah. If you did a focus group with Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, George Bush, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and Hillary Clinton, and said, talk about Bibi Netanyahu. What words come to mind when you think of Bibi Netanyahu?
I don't think we can repeat them on this air.
You can't, but they'd all say the same thing. He treats American leaders like crap. Yep. He understands our politics as well as they do. He's harder to deal with in terms of leverage. He's just like he's just like Putin. And I'll be curious to see if Trump 2.0, we've seen in some areas, he's learned a lot. He had 4 years to think about it. He's improved in his capacity in some ways. Does he have some way to get leverage over this guy, or is it all just Groundhog Day, where Bibi's more powerful than the American president?
But that raises a point too, which is, and I said this in the fall when people were kind of crapping all over Biden on this. But Trump left office in 2021, he hated Netanyahu. He was livid that Netanyahu congratulated Biden, that he recognized Biden. They traded insults on social media. I go back to the first day of January 6th, Trump kind of was not very supportive of Israel. Then he walked it back super quickly when he realized what had really happened, I think. So Trump doesn't seem to forget very easily and doesn't seem to forgive very easily when it comes to someone who showed him up. So everyone else about that election, he tries to get even. I'll be curious.
John?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's a little bit of Trump that's not going to forget how Bibi handled. And so I think that the one thing that I'll say is that, to your question, all of the previous leaders might come to that same conclusion. I think Trump has a little bit of I can still, I still have some leverage on you and I've got some payback.
And on the merits of where they want to go in the region. I mean, just to take one huge example, Trump's the only president and Secretary of State to not be for a two-party solution. So I mean, he's more in sync with Bibi than the previous presidents who had constant tension. Yeah, go ahead.
But the other thing that's interesting this time versus last time is you had, David Friedman and Jared, who were very close to Trump, that had a relationship with Bibi, that could kind of back channel stuff. I guess I don't know what Steve Witkoff, whether he has a relationship with Bibi and whether it's longstanding or just.
I don't know if it's longstanding,
but it's not growing. The longstanding thing. I mean, he hasn't been over like he was to the Kushners for dinner. Yeah. Mike Huckabee, I'm sure knows Bibi well, but he's not confirmed yet. He's not in office. So I just think that the dynamic's different because there's not those people in between Trump and Bibi that can play interlocutor.
Yeah. Here's the thing. And I don't know what Waltz's relationship with Bibi's like. I don't know what Rubio's relationship. I don't know what the vice president's relationship is like. But here's what I do know. You talked about the history of the insults after the election, after after he congratulated Biden. Any other world leader, well, not any other, but most other world leaders would come today a little bit hat in hand, a little bit bended knee. Like, you're the superpower. I need stuff from you. Oh, by the way, we had a huge public fight. And I'm sorry, even if he doesn't say I'm sorry. Not Bibi. Bibi comes in with cojones the size of jars of gefilte fish. And his attitude is, come on, dude. Like, we'll do this on my terms. So again, I'll be curious to see what the body language is like in public, what's reported in private, and beyond Gaza. Obviously, Trump wants Abraham Accords 2.0. How much do they say? Because again, everything else Trump's doing at Trump speed. Like, let's not spend 9 months doing Abraham Accords 2. Let's deal with the groundwork we've already laid with the Saudis, and let's get moving. Dan.
Yeah, I'll also just add to that Iran. My sense is Israel thinks now is the time to finally solve this issue. They've talked about it, U.S. president. I don't believe Trump. I mean, I think Trump is, and as he should be, a little, I don't want to use the word scared, but like, that is big boy stuff. If that goes wrong and we are in a war in the Middle East with Iran, that is not what Trump wants on his watch.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Let's go to Gabbard and Kennedy. Our friend Meghan McCain has been extraordinarily out there on this platform and elsewhere on behalf of her very, very close friend, Tulsi Gabbard, supporting her nomination. And Meghan this morning tweeted this. 110, please. This incredible image. We'll do 110, please, first. Vote for Tulsi or get primaried. And here's what Meghan wrote on X. 109A, please. One thing about being a Nepo baby is you pick up a lot about the family business through sheer osmosis. The first presidential primary I was ever exposed to was at 13. The first general was at birth. I know a lot about how primary politics functions. Me, MAGA, Charlie Kirk, Maha Moms, independents, anti-establishment, disenfranchised voters who came out to our side this time. The entire coalition is in support of Tulsi Gabbard. We're also in agreement that anyone who votes against Tulsi, we will all collectively pour our resources into primarying the next cycle. Next, please. The election was a mandate from the American people, and all sides of the conservative coalition are going to be represented. There will be no sacrifices, least of all her. This isn't a threat. This is how politics works. Confirm her. Flag, flag, flag. So, as we said, votes today, 10 o'clock Kennedy, 2 o'clock Gabbard. The key senator for Gabbard is Senator Young. I've talked now to two people very close to the process who say Young will be a yes. She'll pass out of committee. She'll win on the floor. Sean, is Young a yes?
Yes.
Dan, is Young a yes?
Yes.
Okay, that was easy. Kennedy, the key in the committee is Sean, is the Moran of Kansas, is that a real thing? Why hasn't he said what he's doing?
That one I don't get. Is it personal? I mean, he's the former chairman of the NRSC. I mean, this is a reliable guy, right?
Yeah.
It's not, there's got to be something that pissed him off throughout, maybe in a private meeting or an issue that he hasn't gotten attention on or something like that, because he's a solid guy that's, this is sort of, to me, there's something here that I just don't.
All right, let's on the Cassidy Kennedy thing, let's simulate a Senate roll call vote, and you all can play Cassidy. Dan, you first. Mr. Cassidy.
Yes.
You're supposed to say aye.
Aye.
Try to get
Yeah.
Mr. Sean, ready? Mr. Cassidy.
Aye.
Yeah, I want to be clerk of the Senate someday. That's a dream of mine.
But then
Type of thing.
Yeah.
But I will say, Senator Thune last week, I think it was kind of said, they got to get a majority vote of committee. We're not going to play the game of bringing them out, as was done with Mick Mulvaney and others. I now believe that was kind of a posturing thing. Even if we're wrong, and even if Cassidy or Moran or Young vote no, I think there'll still be a floor vote, and they'll both be confirmed to the floor. So for those of you who doubted Senator Cotton when he said all of President Trump's nominees, besides Gates and the guy from Florida who was up for, what was the job? I don't remember. FEMA. What was that job? Was that guy who was withdrawn? No. Gates was Attorney General, but there was some guy withdrawn for something else. Except for those two.
The Hillsborough Sheriff.
Yeah. What was the job, though? Was that FEMA? I forget what that was.
No. It was CBP or something.
Right, that's right. Everybody else is going to get through. Senator Cotton was right. Give him credit. All right. Elon Musk. First of all, 106, our friend Mark Caputo I think, broke a little news this morning
Yeah, he
about
sure did.
the buyouts. Mark Caputo reporting on Axios that only about 1% of the workforce is taking the buyout. They've got 2 days to go. They wanted 5% to 10%. Obviously, I'm no math genius. That's well below the goal. And
Can I ask you, wait, are either of you guys shocked by that number?
I'm shocked it's that high under the circumstances, because Democrats have said, don't take it. It's a trick. You'll never get the money. So I'm not shocked.
Surprised. I think it's fairly high.
Yeah.
You think it's high? You're surprised at how high it is.
Yeah, I did not think. I thought that people would either see how these lawsuits go about, see if they can keep their jobs. So I didn't think that many.
You know why I'm not surprised? I've talked to so many federal workers who are just freaked out at work.
Well, that is true.
They just want out. You know, they just want
right.
out.
But I also think if you're 50, if you're getting a deal where you're 50, I don't know. I thought it'd be closer to 2 to 3%. I didn't think it'd be 5, but I thought it'd be 2 to 3.
Just to go back, kudos to Megan for helping her friend. We talked 100%. About her loyalty to her friend, but also she really played a role. I've talked to 2 people on Capitol Hill, one a very senior person who said Megan had a huge influence on
well,
this
and
process.
You know what? Kudos to both the nominees who want it badly enough. They fought for it.
Yep, absolutely. All right, now, and no sign that MAGA was as all in as, or not no sign, but it didn't manifest itself the way it did on Pete Hegseth. And the president's been absent, at least as far as we've seen. He hasn't had to go to the mattresses. Yes.
I think that the thing that was interesting to me, having been out and about and seeing this, right? For Pete Hegseth, you had the hardcore MAGA bros, right? And this was a bro movement.
Yeah.
For Bobby and Tulsi, and it's interesting because they're inextricably linked. If you're for Bobby, you're for Tulsi. There's really not a ton of daylight in there.
Yeah.
But I saw the other night, Marla Maples, Danica Patrick, Jessica Krause from House and Habit, Megan. She posted that picture with Sage Steele from ESPN. I mean, there is Jillian Michaels, I think, was out and about as well. I mean, there was this coalition of very strong, influential women that have largely been on the periphery of politics. They've been involved in issues that together it was like the old Justice League of cartoon lore, because I've never seen that force when brought together. You know, if you ever remember the Justice League, all of them together, like Aquaman, you do that, Superman, you got that.
Which is the Ocean's movie that's women? Which Ocean's number is that?
Oh, well, it has to be like 13 or 14 because 12 was
somebody Google. I think it's 14.
You know, Sean,
that would be Ocean's 8.
Ocean's 8.
It's such a smart point, Sean. You know, just think about it. It's not the Wall Street Journal. It's not the Grover Norquist. It's not the infrastructure of, decades
and it's not
ago.
and it's not the bros.
Right. No, right. But I mean,
but the thing that was so fascinating to me is
the bros. It's all 110. You have the bros. You have the Maha.
But the bros were not as Sean said. The bros were not as visible.
I'm not saying they were here. But if I look at the confirmation process in totality, and I'm a Republican, I have different levers here that the Democrats don't have any. I mean, we have MSNBC and the New York Times, right? That's it right now.
You've got some of labor, you've got NARAL, you've got the environmental movement.
But it wasn't.
We have the people of labor.
See, the difference is that labor is labor, and I get it. Whether I'm sure if you're in the movement, you know the different people, right? Ever since Hoffa left, I don't know who the head of the Teamsters is anymore. Sean O'Brien, actually. But the point is, Sean O'Brien goes out and says something, and it's like, okay, and maybe he can put out a missive to local this and local that. But when you see these women who represent different sectors that you followed, like Jillian Michaels is well known in the wellness space. Danica Patrick, well known in sort of sports and in NASCAR, and they each have their own unique personal following.
But it's more than that. Not only do they have that, they have a way to reach their following, right? Jessica goes on her Substack and says, everybody be for Tulsi, and it's reaching lots of people. This highlights something we've talked about, and it's not nearly talked about enough, even here, which is they have not only the people who are dedicated and are constantly on text chains, active and engaged, but they have the distribution systems to actually get the message out and not only influence the general public, but in this case, Senator Young. I'm sure Senator Young has heard a ton over the weekend, and even today, he's hearing a ton from people.
And what I was going to say, though, to your point about labor, Sean, The problem with our Democrats' relationship with labor now is if the labor leader puts out a missive, 65% of their members don't listen to what labor says. It's why they didn't endorse.
If they hear it at all.
Yeah. So I mean, the problem is when the people you guys are talking about say something, they have an army behind them that is fully mobilized and willing to go. Yep. It's an organic, passion for what they're speaking to. On our side, we have a bunch of elites with nobody behind them.
Yeah,
and
your side still has like these tender mercies, like, well, I can't work in coalition with that person because I disagree with something they once said.
Yeah,
these people in this coalition, they don't care. Like Megan said a ton of stuff about Trump that's negative, right? The people in the coalition don't care. They're just like, we got a shared goal. Grover Norquist was brilliant at that. Yeah. Grover Norquist back in the pre-digital age was good at bringing people together, even if they didn't agree on everything, even if they disagreed passionately on some things. If you got a shared project, you work together. And their shared project was getting Bobby and Tulsi Gabbard confirmed, and it looks like they're right on the 1 yard line. We'll see what happens.
Famous Monday morning meetings in Grover's office. Yep.
Quickly, not Monday, Wednesday. Quick. That's all right. Just making sure the historical record is correct. Quickly on Musk. We want to get everybody in. If you want to get in the conversation, please raise your hand if you're here in the two-way platform. So put up 102. So we started talking about the disparity of the points of view about whether the trade war was won by Trump yesterday or not, whether it was a no victory at all or a huge victory, whatever. Same thing going on with Musk, right? There are people who see this as heroic. There are people who see this as long overdue, as correcting decades of injustice and unfairness and waste. Musk is very focused on cutting. You see here his tweet. He's tweeting up a storm, even more than usual, I think, and saying, America, there's one chance to deal with bureaucracy, to cut spending, to put the people back in charge. And it's up to the people to do this. Responding to a Schumer tweet. Okay, put up 103. Our friend Bridget Fatesi, who's a genius. If you don't follow her, you should. Here's what she says. An unelected shadow government, this is in response to Elon's tweet. An unelected shadow government just ran this country for 4 years while they hid the fact that the elected president was barely functioning and shamed Americans for pointing it out. It was so bad, the people overwhelmingly voted for Trump, and yet Democrats still don't get it. Last thing, and then I'll throw it open to you guys. Marco Rubio. USAID has become, even though there's tons of cuts and firings and all sorts of things going on in other departments, USAID has become the flashpoint for a variety of reasons. Here is Marco Rubio last night on Fox 101, please, talking about changes at USAID.
So they're completely unresponsive. They just don't consider that they work for the U.S. They just think they're a global entity and that their master is the globe and not the United States. And that's not what the statute says, and that's not sustainable. This is not about getting rid of foreign aid. There are things that we do through USAID that we should continue to do. That makes sense. And we'll have to decide, is that better through the State Department or is that better through something, a reformed USAID? That's the process we're working through. There are things that are happening at USAID that we should not be involved in funding or that we have a lot of questions about, but they're completely uncooperative. So we had no choice but to take dramatic steps to bring this thing under control. We had no choice but to take dramatic steps to bring this thing under control.
So again, there are people on the left, on MSNBC, some people in CNN who are saying this USAID thing is proving that Trump is completely over his skis, that Musk is an idiot, that even people like Susan Collins are raising questions about it, and that this is the threads on the sweater have been pulled to the point where the whole thing's about to collapse. And there are people who say Musk and company are marching with Trump support inexplicably towards massive revolutionary change. Sean, which is it?
Well, I'm actually intrigued as a guy who's been in and out of government for 30 years that they chose USAID first. And I think the way that they did, I actually was really impressed with the White House's response yesterday. I mean, this is the list, you read this stuff off: $70,000 for DEI, Musical Ireland, $2.7 million for electrical vehicles in Vietnam, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I know, it was very telling. Brian Mast, Florida congressman, was on with Margaret Brennan, and she started going after him. Well, that's not that much money. That, to me, if you want to defend that, that tells you exactly they picked the right fight. If you're going to defend our tax dollars being spent like that, good luck. Best to you. And so I think that I was kind of a little head scratching why they picked USAID first out of the gate. But I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And you saw Caroline Leavitt and others go out last night and just sort of boom, 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 boom. If you want to be defending that, I think that's a pretty losing hand.
And presumably they had that list in their back pocket. And Sean, you take the opportunity to use Joe Biden's best idiomatic expression. Good luck in your senior year. Dan.
Is that the great? I have a few others that I would put up.
I like that one a lot. Dan.
Look, I think that Musk is winning the battle. The question is he going to win the war? To Sean's point, USAID, just from the pure politics of it, was a smart first target because it's the least, it's going to garner the least amount of public support if we just pulled in your diner in Green Bay just in a vacuum. And when people hear what Caroline Leavitt said, again, smart politics, no one is going to defend that. I'd say if you went through any agency, any company, any senior executive's expense report, there are usually a few things that you're like, but USAID does some good work, as every agency does. Like every agency, it has good people, but the politics of it, I think, is good for Trump. This is what he ran on. There's three things that I would just kind of flag, though. One, I think Musk is starting to fly a little close to the sun, which is why you're seeing a little bit of pushback, because what you're
2 days in a row.
Right. What you're starting to hear from Musk in his tweets and in some interviews is me, and my team. It is not Trump told us to do this. Trump said this. The fact that the New York Times said, he loves his office. And, he's like, it's all about Musk, the genius of Musk. Musk is outworking everybody. So how close to the sun does he get? Two, I think he's beginning to piss Congress off already. And USAID was the lowest hanging fruit. So when you start to move away from the easy to the just modestly hard, watch to see where some people start to draw a line. Because the way Marco Rubio did it, I think, was smart. The way that Musk, and that goes to my third point, which is, and this is not smart politics, but this is just, I'm from DC. I know a lot of people in government. To Elon Musk and people, karma's a bitch. The way he is treating people is abhorrent. Like, what CEO would go out and trash his employees and his departments he's eliminating on social media, calling them criminals, saying that like they're just horrible. These are people with families. This is their career. You may laugh and say it shouldn't be your career, but for all of us who have a career, like, show some dignity and grace. You want to fire them because that's what you ran on? Like, okay, you won the election. But the way that they are just trashing and insulting people publicly and privately, to me, is disgusting. Someday, karma will come back.
Dan, I have to say, in the words of Brandeis political scientist Pink, that answer was effing perfect. Clip that off, guys, and get that on social soon. Sean, do you want to say anything? And we're going to the audience.
Yeah, I would just say that the thing that's interesting about the Musk situation is there's two guardrails here. The one is exactly as Dan put it. As soon as he starts taking too much credit, it becomes like, Steve Bannon had this issue when he was on the cover of Time magazine, and Trump started to say, hey, wait a second, you're getting way too much credit. But then there's the other side, which is what he was addressing a little in the Oval Office yesterday, which is you've gone a little too far. So he's got to figure out how to stay right in between, which is I can't get enough credit, but I also can't go enough where I'm cutting stuff that's third rail. And
the two people I'm curious to know what they think about this, maybe they'll join us tomorrow, are Susie Wiles and JD Vance, because their position on this is not known. All right, we've had our say. Now it's your turn. I love that hackneyed way of introducing everybody. At the convention, the Republican convention in Chicago, in Milwaukee, they talked about the people who came and spoke who weren't famous as everyday Americans. So let's bring in our first ordinary everyday American, just an average guy. Don't know exactly who he is. So you, sir, John, you, sir, ordinary American. Why haven't I been on the commentary podcast for like 2 months?
Because we do it around the same time that you're on. And so as it happens this morning. did it.
Be a little flexible.
I had a chance to log in.
Yeah, be a little flexible.
Okay,
I like being on. I like being on.
Have you on? You're great, and I wanna elevate. I'm here to elevate the two-way morning meeting. I'm going English literature.
Okay, please do. The floor is yours, sir.
Senator Bill Cassidy.
Yes,
So, Sean, you say Senator Bill Cassidy, if he votes no on RFK, he's done, right? That's the end of his political career. I mean, now, first of all, he's not up till 2028. So he's got 3 years. He'll be 72. He was elected in 22. I just looked it up, unless Wikipedia has it wrong, which is possible. So he's got 3 years. He doesn't have it's not next year. And he'll be 71 or something like that.
That's young in the Senate.
In the Senate, it's like
it's childlike. He's a naif.
Yeah, he needs to be carded. However, he will have been in for 12 years or something like that. Anyway, so it's more of an open shot than one would think. It also would free him up to do whatever, if in fact it is the case that he is writing.
Good point, Citizen John.
Okay, that's number one. But I want to point out that my favorite political novel is Anthony Trollope's Phineas Finn.
By the way,
yes.
I think Cassidy's up in 26.
Okay.
I thought he was too, but
it says here he assumed office. It's 2014. You're right, 2026. Okay, so he's got 18 months, whatever. Okay, so he'll be out.
Yeah,
I'm wrong. I was looking at the wrong number. I knew.
You're just an ordinary citizen. You're not expected to be an expert.
Ordinary citizen. I'm not. I don't have the depth field of these guys. But
and if you've ever listened to the commentary podcast, you know facts are optional.
Facts are optional and uncorrected, and we go uncorrected. So there we. Anyway. So Phineas Finn is my favorite political novel. It's by Anthony Trollope, written in the 1860s, and it's not about a guy at the end of his career, but at the beginning of his career. He's a 25-year-old penniless Irish lawyer who unexpectedly gets elected to a seat in Parliament and comes to London to make his fortune. And the novel, which is spectacular in every way, concludes with Phineas Finn in a crisis. And the crisis is there is a vote that he believes that he should cast on Irish tenant rights.
John, just pause right there. I need to warn our affiliates. We're going to run a little bit over because John's going to read all of chapter 4. So, go ahead.
I was looking for a good quote, but it's prolix. Anyway.
Okay, keep going.
Vote on something. He has to vote on something. And if he votes on it, it's the end of his career. Not only if he votes on it and it passes, his district will literally be essentially not what we would call gerrymandered, but it will essentially be eliminated. And he would have to then go and be moved into another district and find some new source of money. And the leadership of his party will be very angry at him anyway and isn't going to want to, help him. And so it is about this long, dark night of the soul that he has to go through, which is... I'm so glad you're so literate, Mark.
John,
anyway,
I am listening. As is the audience.
But my point is that this is a moment for Bill Cassidy. He knows he wants to vote against RFK.
Not 100%, because he's ambivalent. It's not just the politics. Bill Cassidy is less likely to vote on the politics than almost anybody, and he sees the upside of Maha. He knows that our medical. The status of our lack of health is a huge problem, and he knows that Bobby Kennedy is a singular voice.
If Bobby Kennedy were nominated by the Democrats, if Harris had won and Bobby Kennedy were nominated by the Democrats to run HHS, every single Republican would have voted against him.
Correct.
And Bill Cassidy would be leading the way as the doctor who says, this guy is a lunatic on vaccines. Bill Cassidy said, 100%. I ran a clinical trial on vaccines.
100%. But if the Democrats nominated somebody for Secretary of Defense with Pete Hegseth's background, every Republican would have voted no too.
Okay, I agree with that. But I'm saying, I think, knowing what I know about Bill Cassidy, which isn't a lot, but is enough, that all things being equal, he would like to vote. His conscience says,
John, I know him better than you based on what you said.
You're saying he has no conscience.
No, what I'm saying is he's ambivalent because he sees the upside of Bobby Kennedy. Bobby Kennedy already, even pre-confirmation, I contend, I've said this before, has done more to spread the word about the health crisis for our children than anyone in American history. I think that's true. Tell me who would top him. And Senator Cassidy sees that.
Well, because much of what he says is bullshit and awful, and so yeah, maybe.
Well, I
much,
disagree,
no,
John.
but much of
I
what he
personally
says,
disagree
much
about
of what he says is true and strikes a chord with tens of millions of Americans.
What that American children
That
are
our food is screwed up, and that parents have concerns about vaccines. Those things are both true.
Yeah, parents do have concerns about vaccines. Okay, I don't want to have a fight about Biden. I'm saying I want to go back to Bill Cassidy. I'm saying forget Bill Cassidy. There is a whole we could go to Susan Collins and Tulsi Gabbard for this as well, or whoever, or anybody who's a hawk. The great thing about this book, Phineas Finn, is that it posits, as very few political texts posit, a fight between what you believe you should do and what ambition and being a good party man tell you that you should do. And Phineas Finn, in the end, votes his conscience, loses his seat, and goes home and marries a local girl and becomes a lawyer again in Dublin.
Sean, thank you, Citizen John. Sean, your view of Phineas Finn and its applicability to the current polity.
I'll add it to my Amazon reading list.
Okay. Is that all you want to say about it?
I just look, here's the thing that I'm watching the Today Show this morning, and Craig Melvin comes on and does this whole thing about how ultraplastics are ending up in our brain, and I'm like, it was Bobby Kennedy and the MAHA movement that brought this issue forward. It was Bobby Kennedy and MAHA that brought red dyes to the forefront. It was Bobby Kennedy and the MAHA movement that warned us of so many of these things that are actually happening, the conflicts of interest at the FDA, the CDC, the NIH. I mean, there's not a nominee that I'm probably 100% on board with. I have concerns about Bobby Kennedy when it comes to his stance on life and his protections of the unborn. However, he has assuaged the president and enough people when it comes to that I'm willing to give him a pass. But I think that the fight for wellness and exposing some of the corruption that's going on and the conflicts of interest, I'm willing to take, because no one else is speaking about that. So I give the guy a ton of credit for what he did. There's a reason that these moms and these strong women have gotten behind him, because he's given voice to issues that have gone dismissed and unheard for so long. So I think it's dismissive to say, oh, well, he said some stuff at one point and he'd get, he's been a champion.
I'm worse than dismissive. I think he is a force for evil.
Okay.
Understood.
Dismissive.
Dan, understood. Dan, what do you think of this Phineas and Ferb thing?
Well, I think, and this is true of a lot
Wait,
of
who's Ferb? Ferb doesn't speak.
Phineas and Ferb is a kid's
Phineas
thing.
and Ferb the kids?
I'm making
kids
It's
book?
fantastic.
I'm making a Norm
Norm
Crosby joke.
That's it. Speaking of child's play there. I think the thing is with so many of these nominees, and RFK personifies it. If you want the secretary to focus on a traditional set of issues, then he is not your best person. If you think, to Sean's point, and we hear it on here all the time, and I think, John, you watch and listen and know this. If you think that the HHS and its subsidiaries are not focused on the right issues, or they need to focus on additional issues, such as, I think in his hearing, he talked about all the foods that are processed one way for America and a different way for Europe. And just lots of people have these experiences. I myself developed a gluten intolerance in my mid-30s out of the blue. Not in our family anywhere. We have no idea why this happened. Believe it's because of certain foods that are now processed certain ways. So for all of those people who have issues that their children have bumped into, that have questions, RFK is their hero. He had the balls to say it, it sounds like Trump, right? Stick by it, not apologize for it, push and push and push and push until the Biden administration says, you know what, we're so embarrassed on red food dye, we're going to just do this.
Yep.
So the guy who says that the COVID vaccine was engineered to spare Jews, that's great. That's a
look,
fantastic
John,
guy.
John,
No, but
John,
No, I hear
I'm
you.
with you.
I get it.
I'm with you
Okay.
in his unsuitability for the job.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
totally with you on that. But it's one stray remark at a dinner party. Like
Yeah, I know.
let's focus on the things he said consistently that are wacky.
Okay, now can I go one other just one more second because I want to make a point I made on my podcast, which is helpful.
As long as
Really
you reference
fast.
Immanuel Kant, you can say anything you want.
Okay, well, Immanuel Kant did provide the categorical imperative, and I think Elon Musk is providing a categorical imperative potentially for Trump that he can use hugely. Sean mentioned that it was very clever that USAID was the first agency to go at because the data are so overwhelmingly embarrassed, right? That it's very useful, right? Okay. Yeah. It's not just that. The New York Times has a piece today in this Musk story, 57,000 paragraphs down, where they point out that the Government Accountability Office has located $263 billion that have gone missing from federal subventions in 2023.
Yeah.
The deficit is $1.8 trillion. This is 1/7 of the federal deficit.
It's real money.
Missing. And if this isn't Trump's issue, you remember Trump, he doesn't care about the budget, he doesn't want to balance the budget, all of that. This is the first time I've seen meat put on the bones of the idea that it is not only
Totally agree.
But that hundreds of billions of dollars are being stolen from federal coffers.
That's why they want access to the Treasury. That's why they want access to the Treasury payment system.
Yeah. I mean, look at the Pentagon fraud. Like, that's the thing. If you,
John, but it's not even that. USAID, that's my point, is you're mentioning things people have talked about for 20 years. We're going to go into like the Commerce Department.
But John, here's the problem.
John,
but here's the political problem. When you move into the Pentagon and the Commerce Department, now you're going to start hitting people's pet projects. Most of that spending was because some senator, Republican or Democrat, was pushing for it. And they're going to start to say, back off.
Right. But a lot of those programs were programs that somebody wanted 40 years ago. I
agree.
And that guy is dead. That guy's been dead for 40 years. Yes.
John, we're so happy to have you back.
Okay.
We're gonna move on to other people. My lawyer and your agent are going to have lunch at Michael's next week, and we're going to merge the programs. We're going to solve this by merging the shows. Thank you for coming. Please come back regularly.
The Upper West Side is not represented.
Citizen John. Greg, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell us what the name of your podcast is, where you are, and what's on your mind today. After you unmute. There you go. Go ahead.
Morning.
Good morning. Thank you for coming. That was a beautiful fire. Is that a real fire?
It is.
As in gorgeous.
Thank you. So I wanted to the discussion about Bobby Kennedy there.
I'm sorry, sir. Where are you calling us from?
Oh, I'm from the mountains of northern Colorado.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Got a bunch of snow out there and a cold morning.
Yep, sir. Go ahead. Sorry.
So I think a lot of this comes down to conviction and whether you have conviction on matters or not. I think the Democrats have kind of lost their place on conviction. They've bred a lot of conviction out of their leaders. And so you end up with a bunch of people reacting to anything because they don't really stand for much right now. And I think they've got to move, I think, middle, because that's what America wants to see is some of these extreme people compromising on things that are in the middle. But Bobby Kennedy and Hegseth and Gabbard, et cetera, they may not be the managers that we're accustomed to seeing in these giant departments. But nobody wants to be managed. People want to be led. And these people are leaders. And there's a ton of managers in all those departments. And I think you have to reset the model of what leadership in these departments is going forward. You've got so much mass in them. You can't try and manage them because all you're doing is just continuing this sort of inertia that all of them suffer from. And everybody who hates to see change hates to see a guy like Musk, but he can move at a rate that is so much faster than all these people. He can work so much harder, and that matters. And it's very revealing listening to you guys talk about how the media the journalists generally are lazy. They don't work that hard. I think you could probably say that about a lot of the people that have been in these jobs before. I think you can say that about a lot of the people that are not showing up at work, because you've got 5% of the people that are actually come into the office. I think you've got to find people who can crack the code on this massive inertia. And so I would like you guys to say address why should the American people have confidence in the media or confidence in the government when we see them not working hard and not delivering the same sort of effort that
Greg brilliantly said, and I say very often to smart people come on here, you speak for tens of millions. Thank you for doing that. Dan and then Sean, and then we're going to try to get at least one more person.
Yeah,
Greg,
Greg, I think you make a lot of good points there about kind of having the fortitude to fight forward. One, in my opinion, not the vast majority of government employees are good people who work hard, who show up every day and deliver services. Now, the reason that only 5% are in the office one day a week is they're told they don't have to come in. So if you're given the option, people will not. What we don't know is if they say you all have to come in, do 95% say we're not going to come in, like that. Just like every company in America who's going through this, even in New York City, the investment banks, very smart people, they work harder than anyone, and they're having trouble getting their employees to come back into the office. So this is a kind of nationwide thing. But I think I'll go back to me, it's not what Musk is doing necessarily. I may not agree with it, but it's what Trump ran on and won, and has a right to reorganize his government, what it is right now, as he sees fit, and to some extent with the people that he sees fit. To me, the issue is just how Musk is doing it is shameful. Just, you don't have to go and publicly say you're lazy, you're a criminal, and what you're doing is terrible. Just quietly say you don't have a job anymore.
Sean, quickly.
Yeah, two things. One, the media thing is I agree with you wholeheartedly. That's why their subscriptions and viewership is down, and the cuts are coming because of a lot of what you mentioned. I will just say, on the federal government, there's two separate issues in my mind. I was at the U.S. Trade Rep's office in Bush, very small office, about 250 or so plus people. Unbelievably highly dedicated. I literally think if I went there and said I'm going to cut, I don't know that there was a single position that wasn't focused on the mission and it was great. Conversely, you could walk through the Commerce Department or DOD and there are entire departments that don't know what the heck they're doing. And so there's a bunch of issues. There's bad leadership. There's bad planning. There's bad policy, meaning go to any federal agency on September 1st, and they're basically saying, how do I spend all this money by the end of the year because I get rewarded for spending it? So there's a lot that needs to happen on the federal procurement, the policy side, the personnel side. But I'm just glad that we're finally actually focused on it.
Greg,
I'll say, though, having been in corporate America, and a lot of people on here are too, if you get near the end of your budget cycle and you haven't spent your money, you are told, spend that money, because if it's sitting over, they're going to lower your baseline for the following year.
Dan, I own a company. If I do that, if that's on me, if I'm a part of I get it. That's different. You're spending, when the government's spending my tax dollars, very different.
Greg, thank you. Greg, thank you. All right. Thanks to the comparative literature class taught by John Podhoretz, we are going to run a little bit over, warning our stations now. Jacqueline, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind, and whether you're going to read that book John recommended.
I'm definitely reading it. I'm here in Manhattan. Nice. John, I have to say, I feel like a soul sister here. that I am a fellow conservative that also is like, I cannot believe the incredible manipulation of the public with this whole campaign about the XYZ ingredients are banned in other countries but allowed in the United States. This is a search term. And the amazing thing is, like, again, most of this is about trade and protectionism and has nothing to do with health. And just to give you guys like a really great example of this, Red 3, perfect example. It's barely in any foods. In addition to the fact that it's barely in any foods, it's also not banned in the countries that every single media outlet is saying that it's banned in. And yet we don't, by focusing on these minute issues, food dyes, the idea that food dyes, that there's a link between food dyes and chronic disease. I mean, this was what really got me during the Kennedy hearings, was like, How are we saying that we don't know what's causing chronic disease when it comes to food specifically? We have very, very clear data, overwhelming data. Added sugar, saturated fat, and sodium are the greatest contributors to chronic disease risk in the United States and around the world, in the Western world itself.
But Jacqueline,
So,
he's spotlighting that.
but I find that most of what he's talking about is about very like rather ancillary issues. Like we're gonna investigate the food dyes and their relationship to chronic disease.
Well,
That was
again,
one of the
again, that's what the press focuses on. That's what his critics focus on. He'll talk about it if it's responded to, but mostly he's just speaking in broad strokes. And again, I'm no defender of this choice. I think it's in some ways ridiculous, but in his normal presentation, what he wants to say is we need a massive reorientation away from big sugar, big ag, big pharma towards a system where it's the health, particularly of our children, is given primacy over corporate profits. And
totally agree.
That is a message that previously, even from Democrats, did not have the priority that he's given it.
My only concern is that what are we replacing it with? And in this case, the whole big wellness movement, the end chronic disease lobby that is behind the MAHA movement is all tied to the dietary supplement industry, and all of it has major. I mean, it's almost like you kind of want to know what are his financial conflicts of interest as they relate to actually the food industry itself, because there's only people around him that stand to profit from seeding distrust in big food and big pharma. And that concerns me too, because anything we do for the health of our country is only as good as what is replaced with. And if we're gonna say that we did something amazing by removing red dye from a candy, when already this is an ultra processed packaged food that's high in added sugars, what have we really done? We're not actually changing the food system.
You're correct about that. Dan, brief
you know what I would say, Jack? I mean, Jacqueline, first of all, I think you belong in the Democratic Party, because this is what, I say it tongue in cheek, but also seriously, this is what drives so many Democrats nuts about the Trump era. Because what Mark said is right. With all of Trump's bluster, misinformation, redirects, like everything, you can want to pull your hair out saying, wait, the facts are totally wrong about what you're saying. But to Mark's point, if you don't focus so much on literally what is being said and go to the bigger issue of highlighting new issues, bringing things to the fore that people feel like haven't been addressed, then to, kind of the people who really love Trump, they're like, he's fearless. It's like, I don't care about his tactics. It's the end that I care about. Same with Elon Musk, right? Like just blowing stuff up, totally putting out lies and retweeting like conspiracy theories. But to a lot of people, he's reorganizing the government and shrinking it. And that's kind of like, good. And so they'll look past the craziness. So, I mean, it's like you personify what you said, the conflicts of the modern era about how to think about this. And I ping pong between you and Mark, like, am I wrong? Should I, and how do and as Mark said, how do you combat it and how do you report on it is hard.
Totally.
I don't ever purport to be an expert, but I sort of ask you this question back. If red dye 3 isn't bad, why did the FDA finally ban it? Why did it ban it?
Lobbying. This is a long-standing lobbying effort. Long-standing. This has been going on for years.
So doesn't Big Food love red dye number 3?
No, it's barely used. Red dye number 3 is only in like one Betty Crocker product, for example, and hot tamales it used to be in, but it was actually eliminated from their supply chain. So it's barely in anything. So this like, we finally got the Biden administration to do something about this. It's actually, and I mean, not to get too in the weeds, but the Delaney clause is what it was. It was how they were able to get this done. Basically, it's this whole law. It's this law that went into effect in 1958 that said that if you show cancer risk in humans or animals, you can ban an ingredient. But in animals, the mechanism of action by which red 3 causes thyroid cancer, that doesn't exist in humans. So it's not even like the dose. I mean, we could have a whole conversation about the dose, but in this case, it's actually the mechanism of action isn't even there for human beings. So we do this thing where we like celebrate the banning of an ingredient and say we've done so much in the name of children's health. And I feel like we're just it's just smoke and mirrors. Like it's just
Yeah,
kind of
but
and yeah.
Jacqueline, very, very glad you're here. But
Yeah.
I need to say, to paraphrase or borrow the line from the late great Charlton Heston, you will have to pry my hot tamales from my cold dead hand.
Same. I love hot
Not-
tamales
not
too.
give
I
those
couldn't
up.
agree
They're
more.
Incredible food. Thank you for coming. Always love having you here.
Thank
and
you.
particularly
Thank
to talk
you.
about Bobby Kennedy. Please come back regularly.
Will do.
Tonight on Two-Way Tonight, amongst our guests will be James McGuire, extraordinary expert on all things AI and Silicon Valley. So he will be here, and of course we'll have the press conference and all the developments related to the visit, and of course a full comprehensive wrap-up of the confirmation votes for Tulsi Gabbard and RFKJ. So join us tonight, 6 o'clock Eastern time. And this program, inexplicably, despite the train wreck that today's episode was, we'll be back tomorrow. We've been extended for another episode tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Sean, Dan, and I, all the latest developments, looking forward to whatever is going to occur on Wednesday. Sean, gentleman from Rhode Island, for his 30-minute closing statement, or 30-second closing statement.
Have a great day. See you tomorrow. Good luck,
Dan.
Tulsi, RFK.
I think we
Dan.
may need 90 minutes in the morning, and you guys may need 90 minutes for your shows in the evening. There's a lot going on.
Yes. And I'll be on the commentary podcast any day now. Thank you all for watching. Very much appreciate all the questions, including John from Manhattan. We'll see you at 6 tonight and 9 tomorrow. Good day.